Hello and welcome to Nirmal, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Here. We have with us Abhishek Rastogi, partner at Khaitan Co and advocate Supreme Courts and various high courts joining in. Welcome to the show, Abhishek, and always a pleasure to speak to you. And this is the most crucial time where it's the best for all the viewers to get insights from you as well.
Thank you for welcoming me, and it's always a pleasure for me as well to be at your show.
Thank you so much. Abhishek, my first question coming to you is that the last couple of years, usually it's been that people have not really taken the budget as a major event due to the, we know a lot of things that have changed. However, taking budget 2022 into consideration from a taxation perspective, do you think it is going to be a crucial event or is it going to be a non-event firstly?
I think it's going to be crucial from the perspective of getting some more incentives, for sure. We have seen the new way of working in this COVID environment. And, a lot of that has to do with working from home. So a lot of salaried class people, a lot of other people have started spending more money with respect to when it comes to work from home. So there could be high internet costs, there could be extra mobile phones, etc., battery usage, more devices, and so on and so forth. So I think the interesting aspect which may come to make this a little more populist budget could be some sort of an incentive, the way you have standard deduction, some sort of that deduction which may come to give some breather or some relief to the taxpayers. That is on the card. So that may certainly make it more interesting.
Right. So overall, if you have to put down buckets where you have to say that, okay, these are the two buckets that we should be looking at in terms of expectations from the budget. One bucket, the most likely one, and two, there is an expectation, but most unlikely to come through. How would you divide those?
So that's a fantastic question, I'm sure. But I think before going to that question, it's important to understand that certainly the finance minister is looking to improve the tax buoyancy. There is no doubt about that. And at the same time, we cannot ignore the number of fiscal deficit which we have today. So if we see the government spendings, in some quarters, the spending is significantly less this year. But if we see the revenue, and I have some data, starting numbers, the revenue has gone up significantly. So what it means is that as far as the fiscal deficit is concerned, it may not be to the extent of 6.8% for the financial year, which was expected or which was calculated at the beginning of the year. So the fiscal deficit may not be 6.6%. Now, how will the fiscal deficit be fixed for the subsequent year will completely depend on the tax revenue collections which happen. Because so what I intend to say is that the finance minister, I think she will do a very pragmatic job to ensure that there is improve of tax buoyancy, but at the same time, she doesn't cross the threshold of the fiscal deficit. This year, she may not cross the fiscal deficit at all, because if we see some of the tax collections, the advanced tax collections after Q3 rose by about 53.5%.
Yeah.
If you see the direct tax collections, it has gone up as much as 60%. And if you see the GST collections at all, also for each of the month, that GST collection has been more than 1 trillion. So which means, with some great numbers in at least 2-3 months. So the revenue has gone up. The tax collections have improved. Now, as far as tax buoyancy issue is concerned, she will address that. Now, will it be a populist budget, keeping in mind various elections, state elections, and so on and so forth? I think what will happen and what will not happen, to answer your question from that perspective, I feel today, what will not happen? Let's go to that. What will not happen? If we see the high income category group of individuals, there is a surcharge of 10% for 50 lakhs to 1 crore. There is a 15% surcharge for income between 1 crore and 2 crore. For income between 2 crore and 5 crore, there is a 25% surcharge and 37% surcharge when it comes to income of more than 5 crores. I think these tax brackets are facing lot of income tax burden. There is less of motivation for a person who's earning more than 5 crore rupees to pay 37% of surcharge, which is phenomenally high. So are we looking for some rejig on the surcharge? Looks difficult, because as I mentioned, that the intention will still remain to improve tax buoyancy. So that may not happen. And you would appreciate that 4% of the people in India, 4% of the taxpayers contribute to about 60% of the taxes.
Correct.
So keeping that in mind, is it right to expect that that burden on that 4% or 5% people is marginally reduced so that they are more motivated for investments, for modernization, and so on and so forth? While the expectation on the cards look good, but it may not happen. The reality is it may not happen. So that's the answer. That was an easy answer, that it may not happen in the near future, perhaps.
Right. So Abhishek, to that as well, in terms of where the tax-free work from home allowance expectation is, do you see anything on that front?
Sorry, work from home?
People have been talking of tax-free work from home allowances, basis what you mentioned as well, in terms of, the internet usage that's happening, the other expenses that have increased as well in the form of electricity because people are working from home. So anything in terms of a work from home allowance or something that you see?
See, today there is a standard deduction of 50,000 rupees. And that has been going for how many years? I even don't remember now. Now, keeping in mind the standard deduction, which is currently there presently, and the amount which individuals are today spending because of work from home, there is a very high likelihood that this standard deduction, in whatever way, it could be COVID salary deduction or standard deduction, they may call it or give it some fancy name to link it to COVID, still send the message across that there is a deduction which has now been allowed due to work from home and so on and so forth, and probably that may continue for 2 years. So that standard deduction or that some sort of deduction is expected. That may come for sure. That is on the card. So that will be a populist measure as well. But I think more importantly, what I think is expected and may happen is, of course, with respect to the savings under Section 80C. Now that limit is rupees 1,50,000, and that limit is there for 7 years. I think 7 years we have gone miles ahead now. That 1,50,000 to incentivize savings must increase. I am very optimistic about it that it will increase. What may also happen is that if you see the health insurance exemption under Section 80D, that is only 25,000 rupees per person. And if you see life insurance or the term insurance plan, there the limit is 150, but it gets covered under Section 80C. So I think keeping in mind the health related issues, the insurance related issues, they may have a separate exemption for the term insurance, the life insurance, term insurance part of it. They may have it over and above 150, or they could overall increase that limit under 80C. That must happen, is on the cards. Looks like for 7 years it has not been increased now. So that's the right time to increase it. Perhaps give more benefits to individuals with respect to health insurance and term insurance. That is expected. That must happen as well.
Right. So, very interestingly, you brought the point of a populist measure that the government is looking at as well. Do you think that this budget could be a populist one?
Not too much of it will be towards the populist measure, because frankly, the populist measure also means that, there'll be less of tax correction. Now, if we see a lot of these infrastructure projects which are there, the government needs to complete a lot of these projects by 2024. So I think this year it may not be a populist measure. The government would want to do more spending. I don't know whether Nirmala ji fixes the fiscal deficit in the range of 6.5% to 6.8%, or like 2021, she may perhaps be a little aggressive to spend more this year and perhaps a higher fiscal deficit. That is to be seen, but my expectation is that the fiscal deficit will be fixed at around 6.5% to 6.8% in that range. And if that happens, this budget cannot be a very populist budget, at least not this year.
Correct, but that's going to put the government pretty much in a catch-22 situation as well with the elections in 5 states which are coming up. So that's something that the government will have to consider. And the second factor that they need to consider on this front that we're talking about is with regards to the Omicron wave as well, because no one really knows how big an impact Omicron has had with regards to different businesses go yet. There is an impact. Few businesses have not really seen much. So it's still a catch-22 situation for the government. Don't you think so?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And if I were to answer that question, I would answer it very, very differently. I think there are two sectors which government must focus by way of incentivizing, by way of the direct benefit going to the consumers and so on and so forth. And I think one is education and second is health. And I am speaking that for a reason. Now, why health? Today, the country has seen in last almost 2 years, the impact which has been created because of this pandemic. We do not want to get into the situation where we do not have health infrastructure. We do not want to get into the situation where the country or the pharmaceutical sector is not able to manufacture those essential drugs. So I think one on the cards certainly be to reduce customs duty impact on certain of those raw materials which are used today to indigenously manufacture these medicines in India. So for instance, if you see about denatured ethyl alcohol, from the concessional rate of 2.5%, advertently or inadvertently, that has gone up to 5%. Now that's an essential product for me to make hand sanitizers, or for that matter, for it to be used to further make remdesivir. Now, today it may not be relevant, but if the import prices of those products will increase, the domestic manufacturing will get hurt somewhere. So I think those imports with respect to health needs to be addressed. Also, if we see the COVID related expenses which have happened. Now, if we see a lot of families have suffered in this financial year because of COVID due to hospitalization and so on and so forth. Now, could there be some way to give a deduction with respect to those expenses which have been incurred or may happen in the near future? So even if you have an insurance policy, the cover is only to the extent of 8 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees generally when there is hospitalization. But actual expenses are much more. 8-10 lakh rupees today, you don't even feel that, that is enough. So I think when this spending is there with respect to COVID related activities, will the government come out? Will the government be compassionate enough to today give some sort of deduction when there are actual health related issues? Because a person would not want to have a double brunt of high taxes and then not getting any deduction with respect to health services. So I think health sector is certainly the focus area. Second is very important again is education. And when I say that with full responsibility. Today, if you see last 20 months or 24 months, the way the education services are getting imparted, it has completely changed. The dynamics have changed. Will it become real for future? I don't know. Will it become hybrid for future? I don't know. But yes, as we speak, it has become a reality. We need technology upgradation to happen in educational sector, be it at what level, state level, education institutes, private run institutes, or the most modern institutes. Now, if the government focuses on health, if the government focuses on modernization of education by way of technology advancement, it will certainly help. And if you see today how education sector is taxed, so for instance, if they have a revenue of 1,000 rupees, to the extent of 1,500 rupees is what they could accumulate in terms of profit. So if 15%, now, which means that if there is an expenditure which is not there beyond 85%, it is difficult for them to carry forward these profits. So what I want to say is that they must be incentivized today to have these upgradation in technology which must happen. There must be an incentive enough for them which must be given. There must be notional deduction for this technology advancement which they do. And if they improve in technology, they must be given additional deduction, the way it is for scientific research, development, and so on and so forth. They get added advantage. They are incentivized. So I think those are the measures which must certainly come, which will help the government to focus on these sectors and these education institutes, because otherwise they are paying tax on the differential amount. They may just carry it forward, that balance of 5%, which in my example remains. So I think it is better to incentivize them. It is better to enhance technology in education sector. So I think health and education must remain the focus area of the government if they have to look at on a holistic basis.
Right. So when you mentioned about health and education as well, another aspect that everyone is considering is easing of the tax burden of 18% on term insurance policies. Do you think that's something that the government could consider and bring down the GST?
See, I think budget is not a very good time to make a lot of changes about GST, because that happens in the GST Council meet.
Yeah.
Today, we know that fiscal federalism is today at its peak with all of these decisions with respect to GST being taken by the GST Council. It may not happen in the near future, but whether that should happen or not, I am a firm believer that 18% on term insurance is a high tax. This must reduce, can reduce. So I think the government at some stage may think of rate rationalization for GST as well. We do not know currently whether the merging of 12% and 18% will happen at 16%, 15%, or it happens at 18%. But certainly, to answer your question, I think that will make a lot of sense to increase the GST rate on these term insurance.
Right. And overall, apart from these measures that we've already spoken about, Abhishek, which are the other crucial aspects one should be considering and watching out for in the budget?
I think I'm very optimistic when it comes to electric vehicles for a reason. Today, electric vehicles are not very popular. So from the perspective of reducing pollution, and from the other perspective also that you need to encourage the sector, electric vehicles manufacturing and usage has to be promoted. Now, how do you do that? Today, if you talk about the affordable housing, right, there is a preferred rate of interest for affordable housing. The loan rate interest on car is different and home loan is different, right? If you could get the rate of interest for electric vehicles somewhere closer to affordable housing, the manufacturing will boost up. We will address a lot of problems which the auto sector may face with respect to EVs. And also what may happen is that once this production increases and the usage of EVs increases, the pollution and all other problems are also resolved to a very large extent. So I think that must be on the cards. I'm sure with respect to electric vehicles, there will be some announcements. And if that happens, whether that announcement comes by way of incentivizing the sector by way of product-linked schemes, PLI schemes, and so on and so forth, no one knows. But I think the sector deserves some encouragement at this stage.
Right. And taking about these sectors as well, what's your view with regards to support to MSMEs as well as the contact intensive sectors? Because clearly, measures to boost credit flow to these sectors and to address their stress is something which needs to be taken care of, especially when you talk about hospitality or you talk about, travel, when you talk about logistics. I mean, there has been a long-standing demand status from the hotel sector as well to be potentially be given the infrastructure status. So anything on that front?
So I think if you see related problems with respect to MSMEs or people who are in the mid-income group category. Today, what is the problem? The problem is that if you see deductions of ad hoc deductions of 50% for a professional, the limit there is 50 lakh rupees. So for example, doctors, chartered accountants, lawyers, etc., they get ad hoc deduction from income to the extent of 50% under section 44 ADA if they are not claiming any expenditure and if they are not claiming any depreciation. Now, I think that limit from 50 lakhs must certainly increase, because if you see the traders and the manufacturers, they get that benefit to the extent of 10 crore rupees, provided, of course, 95% of the transactions are digital and so on and so forth. So I think if you really want to encourage the mid-sized people or these middle level professionals you need to increase that limit, because what will happen, the compliance burden on these people will reduce. They will be more open to pay taxes on a higher amount, more formal economy will move, and so on and so forth. So I think that limit must increase from 50 lakh rupees to perhaps a crore, or even if it is 2 crore rupees, I don't see any loss there, because the higher that amount is, the compliance burden gets reduced. So I think that's there. Secondly, if we talk about few of these problems with respect to MSME sector, today there are a lot of regulations. Today there are a lot of compliances. We've been talking about ease of doing business in India and so on and so forth, but the compliance costs have increased, right? So can there be a better mechanism to increase some of these threshold exemptions? So for instance, if you talk about GST, the threshold exemption is 20 lakh rupees. And I was telling someone else the other day that the 20 lakh rupees is very, very low amount, because that leads to some about 5,500 rupees a day. So do we need to look into those threshold limits and so on and so forth, both on the direct tax side and the indirect tax side? The answer is yes. I think we need to reduce the burden. And if you actually want to, if you want to give the actual benefit to the MSME sector, the actual benefit could go to them by reducing the hardship which comes to them for doing business, right? They will manage their business. They know their business really well. They are known in the local market, but they are bothered too much about compliances and a lot of these things which happen all around.
Right. And with all of this, do you think that the government will increase their focus on increasing the share of manufacturing in GDP? That's one. And two, the PLI schemes and other schemes that actually promote Make in India is something that will have its due interest this time around.
So I think this product-linked incentive schemes, we must see the objective of these schemes for different sectors. If the objective of the scheme is to give benefit only to top players, then it's a different discussion altogether. But if the objective of the scheme is to promote a sector, then the threshold limit of investment must reduce. So for example, if you want to give the incentive to the pharma sectors, and you say the active manufacturing ingredient manufacturer manufacturing all of these products A to Z will get the benefit, then don't have a very high threshold exemption limit for either substantial investment, expenditure, and so on and so forth, because then only the big ones will get the benefit. The MSME sector will never get that benefit. So keep that limit a little low, so there could be more participation which may happen, and the sector gets the boost. So I think, except for certain sectors where we know for a fact that, for example, electric vehicles, or for that matter, any other such sector, there the limits could be set high. But I think for few sectors that limit must be seen again, so that the benefit is given to a larger base. And perhaps the quantum of benefit to each individual may reduce, but the base has to expand. And then only the benefit to the MSME sector will flow in.
Absolutely. I think, this time around, it seems that the budget could be interesting from a lot of aspects. Maybe some places, yes, there could be disappointments, because I'm sure that the government cannot really keep all the 130 million people happy in the country.
Disappointed, I'm sure. But I think through the medium of your channel, what I would suggest is that today, if you see that 4% of the taxpayers, and I mentioned that they contribute to 60% of the revenue.
Yeah.
Now, you know how these miles in airline industry work, or for that matter in hotel industry work, right? You have blue, silver, gold, platinum, and at last there is an ambassador category if you have paid taxes beyond a level. I think if you really need to incentivize the rich to pay taxes, the country today needs to have a PAN-linked, Aadhaar-linked, government-issued cards. These premium cards must be given to those taxpayers who are paying higher amount of income. So, for example, if you're in the category of 10% surcharge, then you get a blue card. If you are in a 15% category surcharge, you get a silver card. If you are in a 25% surcharge category, you get a gold card. And if you're in a 5 crore plus with 37% surcharge, you get a titanium elite status.
Hmm.
That must be used as a card for different facilities to these individuals who are contributing significantly. Now, for example, if you are paying surcharge at 25% and you have paid that for 10 years in your life, right, as a professional or as a businessman or whatever, you become a lifetime gold card holder. 10 years you pay that, you become a lifetime gold card holder. You pay surcharge of 37% of the highest tax bracket, you become a lifetime titanium card holder. And for instance, if you pay 100 crores of tax in your lifetime, you become an ambassador class. So what will happen is, the moment these incentives are linked, and this will, by the way, will not hit the government on the revenue side at all, because you're just incentivizing them. And you could link certain of those facilities for them. So for example, if they have to get their Aadhaar card updated, they can just walk into a specialized a place, so that they save their time. If there is an entry to the airport, you have some preferred entry for these people, so you save their time. They are paying more taxes, they get some sort of such benefits which is not hitting the government on the revenue side. They are incentivized to pay tax. So I think such measures will certainly help the government to boost revenue, and that 4% of the taxpayer, which today may not be too willing to pay tax, may not mind to pay tax, till the time they're getting some benefits out of that.
Probably that 4% number could overall increase as well on the back of the benefits that the others see.
Absolutely, that may increase. So what will happen is, see, today, if you see the high income group taxpayers, one, of course, is the government compulsion that you have to pay tax. You are living in the country, you have to pay tax. That's a separate reason. A lot of these HNIs today have offices even overseas. They invest their money from outside of India to wherever, in foreign stock exchanges and so on and so forth. Now, you want to retain the money in India. You want to retain that income which generates from that money also in India. Now, if you give them such incentives, right, which could be status, which could be some preference over others, they will be more motivated. Today, the HNI group is more inclined to pay tax because they're seeing overall infrastructure development. So if you see a lot of these cities, these cities have been connected to the metros, and these infrastructure road development projects are great, which is, the great thing which has happened in India in last 6 to 8 years. Second thing, why these guys would not mind to pay tax is because when these taxes are going to the government and are being used for right reason, they are used for that class of people which needs more support or which needs most support. If support is not given to those people, then there'll be more crime, right? So it helps HNIs in that sense as well. Now, that is historic, that is academic. But if you do some out of the box thinking and incentivize this 4% of the population to pay surcharge, but get some benefit. So for instance, if I am in a 37% surcharge category, I'm paying tax to the extent of 30% plus 37% surcharge. I need a booster dose. I need not go out from the house. I just need to call someone and someone will come to my home and give me a jab. What's the problem? I am contributing significantly high. So why must I step out of the house and spend my time? So simple things like that could completely change the perspective.
Absolutely.
Completely change the way people today feel the pinch of paying taxes. That tax must be paid out of the will. And that's why if you see this year, a lot of advanced tax collection has gone up because people do not want additional burden of interest, which comes by way of non-payment of advanced tax. 54-55% advanced tax has increased, which means it clearly reflects that people today know about the tax system. They are willing to pay tax. They believe in the government. They know for a fact that the penny which has been paid by them is spent judiciously, is spent for right reasons, is spent for infrastructure. The government is doing right spending. Now, if we add icing to the cake, it will help.
Absolutely. Very well put forth, Abhishek. I mean, a good point as well. And that's something that the government should hear this and take this up as well. I'm going
to give a note to Nirmala ji on this very soon.
Absolutely.
It's just that I'm not able to meet her for some time now because of COVID.
Absolutely. But good luck to you for this, because this is a really good gesture that you're talking about as well, which will incentivize the population overall to start increasing the tax payments, automatically it recycles to a good revenue stream for the government as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Abhishek, so much for joining us on the show. As always, it's a pleasure. It's always good to hear new things from you. Good luck, stay safe, and speak to you soon after the budget.
You be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.